Well, thank you for doing that. Here's like a roadmap. That way you kind of have an idea of where we're headed and what we're doing. This is kind of where we're going. And the first one we want to do is we always want to walk through and we want to try to define terms together. That's what we're going to try to do, is do some of this, part of this together. And again, I want to go back to Bill Shaw. I just want to say something. Tony talked about that we as a staff have been working on this for a really, really long time. And then we did the dangerous thing of inviting, not an outsider, Bill, but somebody outside the staff to be a part of that with us. And I just want to say thank you. And hopefully at the end, the rest of these people will say thank you for the time that you invested with us, listening to us argue and bicker and then being the peacemaker. So anyway, Bill Shaw, thank you for that and the role that you played in this. I want to talk about, that's what you're here for. I want to talk about a leader. I had a conversation with somebody one time. I used to work at a university, and my job was to build a leadership development program there. And one of my friends, I was at their house one time, and my friend kind of was jawing at me, having fun with me, saying, I don't get why you spend your whole life talking about leadership. It's not rocket science. And I paused for a second after I was angry on the inside, and then I just said, I wish it were that easy. Okay, now, here's what I mean by that. I'm not making fun of rocket scientists. If you're a rocket scientist in the room, I'm sorry, you are smarter than I am. But my point is, those kind of things, there's like formulas, right? And you plug in a formula and it works. I'm not sure there's a formula that you can plug in that makes you a leader and makes you always do the right thing in the midst of a leadership situation, okay? So that's what makes this really, really difficult. And so if at any point tonight it feels like, well, here's this formula, 1 + 1 will always equal 2. And if you just put 1 + 1 in there, you're going to get the right result. Let me just tell you, it doesn't always work that way. And the reason it doesn't work that way is because, first of all, you are fallible. And then secondly, you work with other fallible people. So there's all of these different parts to it. But here we go, leaders. So I want to walk through some of this with you a little bit. And here's the first part of it. Somebody who influences culture. Somebody influences culture. And the green words should always be something I think that you fill in. So that'll be your cue, that's something that you write in there. But somebody who influences culture. Anybody got any idea why this would be at the first part of this definition for us? Real quick, anybody? Somebody who influences culture. Why is that part of it? What's that? Okay, everyone's different. That can be part of it. What else? That's what Jesus did. By the way, we are in church. So if you're not sure what the answer is, that's what Jesus did. Is always going to be perfect. Like it was perfect right then, but it's always going to work, right? All right, so we're talking about that. So part of what happens here with leadership is it doesn't just influence people, it influences culture, or it influences the whole room. Okay, if that's what we're talking about. So here we go. Someone who influences culture and then inspires action. Inspires action. We think that anytime you're talking about leadership, it is moving in a certain direction. So if we're not doing anything that inspires action in people, in the group that you're trying to lead, in your team, then I'm not sure what we're doing. And if you lead anything, this is the part that it becomes very frustrating for you at times. Because I think built inside of you as a leader is this idea of progress and movement. And anytime that you're involved in something and there's no progress and movement, sometimes you can get frustrated on the inside. So someone who influences culture, inspires action, and then here's the other part that we said, equips others to do the same. Equips others to do the same. We're going to break out this word equip in a little bit because almost every single word on here like means something and it has a deeper meaning there. But here's what we think, that as a leader, if you are not creating other leaders, then you are failing at your job, even if you succeed at whatever task you're trying to do. You know, sometimes people say that one of the things that a leader is supposed to do is they're supposed to replace themselves. I understand what people mean by that, but a lot of times that becomes an egotistical thing for a leader. It's like, I got to find somebody who does it exactly like I do it. No. You're probably trying to find somebody to replace you, but they're not going to look like you and act like you. Because God created them differently, and God gave them a different set of skill sets. And so you're not trying to create clones, but you are trying to equip others so that they can do the exact same thing, which is they can influence culture and they can inspire action. All right, real quick. What right off the bat is missing in this definition? Anything that you're just like, what in the world? How could they? Okay, scripture maybe, right? So that's one of the things that we are trying to do in the midst of this is we are trying to make sure that everything that we talk about tonight is biblically grounded, but that it also translates in other environments where maybe the Bible or the Christian part is not honored or seen. Okay? So, but good. Okay, anything else? Anything else that you're just like right off the bat, you're like, why is that part not in there? Anything? Oh, knowledgeable. Good. That there's something about a characteristic of a leader, right? That they need to be knowledgeable. There's nothing in there about being a person of character, right? There's nothing in there about the skill set that they know. So this is what we're saying is what a leader does, not necessarily what a leader is. Okay, so that's part of the nuance of this piece. All right, I want to talk about this part here, about the equips part. I want to define the term equip, and because it's really, really important that we're all on the same page when we're talking about this. And again, every single group of people needs to come up with their own language. So this is what's really, really difficult is that we're talking about Gateway Church's language. You may change the language into whatever kind of context you are in, but I would tell you a shared language for a group of people is very, very important. So when we talk about the word equipping, here's what we mean. Look at that monster. That's like a big one, right? Let me walk through it. Simultaneously doing three things. Now, I cannot walk and chew gum, so I'm not sure how to walk, chew gum, and sing a song at the same time, but that's kind of what we're talking about here. There are three things that are going on simultaneously, and that is discipling somebody to follow after Jesus, developing their ministry and leadership abilities according to their shape. Here's what we mean by shape. That may be a new term for you. Rick Warren at Saddleback Church, he's the one that came up with this or identified it, and we think that it's pretty good. So what we mean by according to their shape is their spiritual gift or gifts. That's what the S is. H, what has God placed on their heart? So we think about it this way. What wakes them up at night? What makes them cry? What makes them laugh? What makes them like engage in some sort of activity where they're studying, and all of a sudden 5 hours go by, right? Because there's something that's speaking to their heart. A stands for abilities. What are those abilities that you have? And some people have no idea that they're really, really good with math, and maybe God made them really, really good with math so they could glorify God. They thought they'd be really, really good at math just so they can make money. Right? There's something about abilities in there. P stands for personality. Right? You've got extroverts, you've got introverts. So if we were to take somebody and we're trying to disciple and develop them, and they're an ultra introvert who likes to think and to process, and we just keep giving them opportunities to be in front of people and have to spontaneously speak, not a good idea. And then E, experiences. All of the things that God has placed in your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the things that make you smile, the things that make you cry, have been put there on purpose. And we think that those things are put there on purpose because he's trying to mold you into somebody who is going to be more and more of a leader. And then deploying them into the world to build his church. So what we say is, again, if you were trying to memorize something like tonight, like we said, you are not allowed to leave the building unless you can define equipping. You just go discipling people, like helping them look more like Jesus. Developing them, like there's something about skills and things like that they need to learn. And then, oh yeah, like sending them out to actually put that stuff into practice. You win and you can go home, okay? So that's what we're talking about equipping, and that's something you're just gonna need to see and know kind of as we move along. Tony, you wanna come to find some more words for us?
Yeah, the healthy part that we're gonna really drill into tonight is one of my favorite words really in this whole seminar, because it's one thing to be a leader that's competent. It's another thing to be a competent jerk. It's one thing to be a leader who's really good at your skills. It's another idea to be a leader who just is not good with people and doesn't make you feel safe. It's one thing to be a leader who is really high up in the organization, or it's one thing to be a leader who, again, can do these things, influence culture, inspire people, and lead others to do the same. But if they're not liked at all, or they're not healthy in who they are as an individual, that's not a desirable person to follow. Unfortunately, you've probably seen an unhealthy leader. Unfortunately, sometime in the course of your life, you've been an unhealthy leader yourself. So what is healthy? Defining terms specifically here is intentionally listening and properly responding to God, to self, and to others. We're going to bounce in and out of what does it mean that you are going to intentionally listen. And it's not just one thing to listen, I'm going to respond to God between me and my relationship with Jesus, to the people in the interpersonal dynamics of my family, of my job, of my team, of my neighbors, and then to self. It's not enough just to say, oh, I'm good with other people. Like, hey, are you good with yourself? Are you healthy with yourself? We're going to talk a lot about like this self-awareness and this self-care piece. And so how do we choose to intentionally listen and properly respond? So that's where we're going today when we look at what is a leader, what is a healthy leader, and how a healthy leader equips. So as we go, we're gonna take some time, and we're just going to unpack what we think as Gateway Church our mark in the ground, that this is who we are trying to be moving forward. Perfectly, absolutely not. But doing it with courage, doing it with intentionality, and doing it with purpose. So without further ado, we're gonna actually start unpacking the first mark of what is a healthy leader.
And Mark's Mark is an interesting word. You probably could have said characteristic. You probably could have said quality. I don't know. We picked Mark, and so that's what we do. Is I want to walk through these, and hopefully, what happens here in the midst of this walking through, it's one of the things that I appreciate about sports. You want to know how you're doing? Look at the scoreboard. And some of you are like, it's not about if you win or lose, it's how you... No, it's about if you win or lose. Like that's what sports is. That's why you keep score. There's no other reason to keep score. And so the hard part about leadership or moving people in any kind of direction, sometimes it's hard to know what the score is or what the grade card is. So that's another way to think about these marks potentially is when you're trying to sit down, you go home after a day, and you're just like, man, what kind of leader was I today? And you're like, well, people liked me. Or we got a lot done. And so I think potentially these marks can be a way for you to evaluate yourself. And then even to evaluate the leaders that you're with and around. And so here's the first one, follow first. Follow first. Follow first, which is an interesting mark for leadership. Right? Sometimes we like to think about leaders are leaders. They're always out in front. They're always the one that are doing this and people are following them. But we think there's something about this characteristic of following first. I'm going to walk through some things that is not and what that does not mean. And here's the first part. It doesn't mean that you're following blindly. This doesn't mean, so again, you're not going like, they taught me at that thing I'm supposed to follow first. Well, there goes a stray cat. I should follow this. It's not blindly following something. And we'll walk through these really fast, and then we'll keep talking. Giving up authority. Following first does not just mean, listen, people have granted you authority in some sort of situation, but therefore I have to follow first, and so therefore I won't exert the authority that I have been given in this space and in this time. So it doesn't mean that. It also doesn't mean letting people take advantage of you. In case as you hear follow first, you're like, well, does that mean I'm a doormat? And no. I mean, if God has given you the title of a leader or a position of a leader, He's asking you to do something with it. So this follow first thing does not mean that. Also doesn't mean being passive. Doesn't mean being passive. This is the one that I probably struggle with the most, because either I want to go full bore in a situation or I just want to be passive and sit back. And the problem for me is in the midst of these marks, I told somebody earlier, this is the absolute worst day for me to be standing on a stage talking about leadership. Had a couple meetings today and I didn't do them right? Like I didn't in a sense exemplify some of the things that we're trying to talk about tonight. And so I have the tendency either to be way too aggressive or just way too passive. But this idea of following first doesn't mean that. Number 5, violate your conscience. Again, think about this. This just means every leader has a leader above them. Remember when you were a kid and you just couldn't wait to get out of school or have your own job and then no one can tell you what to do? And then you got a job and you were even the boss and then you realized there's people telling you what to do all the time. So what we mean by that is this following first does not mean that you were supposed to do something that violates your God-given conscience just because you're supposed to follow first. Okay? All right, let's keep going. These are really, I love the Apostle Paul. I love everything in the Bible, but there's something about what the Apostle Paul says. He says, and you should imitate me just as I imitate Christ. So this idea of following first. Paul goes, listen, you can follow me, but guess what? You can only follow me because I'm following somebody else. And so you can trust me to be a really, really good follower and to show you what that looks like. And so I think the Apostle Paul does that. I think Jesus, my goodness, doesn't Jesus do this perfectly with God the Father? He says, I don't do anything that he doesn't tell me to do. I only speak when he tells me to speak. I only judge how he tells me to judge. I think Jesus is the perfect example of this, but I'm a preacher, so I think Jesus is the perfect example for everything. Okay, follow first. What is it? And here's some things really, really quick. It's modeling. In some respects, we already talked about that. You want to model for people. Can you imagine what that was like if you were trying to lead a group of people, but every time you talked about your boss or your board of directors or your whatever, you were always making light of them, making fun of them, thinking they were stupid and silly? What? I mean, again, would you want the people that you are trying to lead to do those things about you? No. So as part of this following first is you are going to model what it looks like to follow well. Also, what it means to live under authority. What it means to live under authority. Scripture says this too, but I honestly believe this. You cannot have authority unless you know how to live under authority. You don't deserve to have any authority. And you'll probably misuse authority, and I will misuse authority, and you'll do all kinds of things as a leader just because you want to if you don't understand what it means to live under authority yourself. All right, let's go on now. Number 3, celebrate others. Part of this follow first thing is also the idea that every good idea doesn't have to be your idea. And you celebrate others and you teach your team how to celebrate others because you are constantly trying to figure out how to celebrate those people that are before you. Number 4, caring more about the mission than self. That's part of what following first means. That I care, that you care as a leader. Again, it's not about you. This is so hard, guys, right? It's not about you. Yet you have to model all of these things so it feels like it is you, but is it you or is it the mission that whatever it is that you're trying to lead is trying to do? And if you end up making it about yourself, honestly, it may succeed for a while, but you ain't living. At some point you're going to die, or at some point you're going to move, and if it's all about you, then the whole thing crumbles and falls apart. So this idea of following first is caring more about the mission, whatever that mission is, mission statement, you can think of it that way, or whatever, of the organization or the team or the group, whatever it is that you're trying to lead into. Number 5, remembering that leadership is given. Leadership is given. I would tell you for most of us who have made horrendous mistakes in leadership, we forgot that it's given and it's entrusted to us, and we thought that it was something that was owed us. Leadership is temporary. Leadership is temporary, and we're going to be held accountable. But leadership is given. Somebody, even if you started your own company, at some point, somebody is like lending you authority and lending you that leadership position. And that's part of what this thing of following first matters. There's somebody in your program that you can take a look at. There's a little bit of a bio about her, but I find her fascinating. She's the first woman CEO of a global auto company. So in 2014, she became that. And as you read the bio in your notes, it's something for you to read later. I think you'll see part of the reason why we selected her as somebody who's a really, really good earthly example of what that looks like to follow first. This next part that we're going to walk through is you're going to see this diagram often, okay? And part of what this is just this idea of this three aspects. Part of it is what our head, like how should our head think? How should we process information? Then our heart, like how do we feel? Like how does that part in there? Whatever our convictions. And then our hands, like what do we actually do? It could have been feet, could have been anything, right? But it began with an H, so it fits. Head, heart, and hands. Those are the three things that we're constantly going to look at in here. And so the first one I want to do is I want to take a look at the head. And so what we're doing is we just got some questions that we may read all of these, but all of them are in your notes. And we're just saying, when you're thinking about this following first thing, and I want to check about where my head is at, here's some good questions to ask yourself. Who are a few leaders that you deeply admire to follow? Be a great thing to think about. You're not mimicking them. You're not trying to be who they are, but you're just going, what are some leaders that when I look at them, I'm like, oh, I could learn something from them. I could see something in their life, and I see how they interact, and I see how they've lived their life. The book of Hebrews talks about that, about leaders in the church. It says, why don't you look at their life and then imitate their faith? It doesn't say imitate them. It says imitate their faith. So who are some of those people? And I would just write down some characteristics about them. Write down some characteristics about them. And I'm not saying that every single one of those leaders you will admire, you will instantly find the follow first idea. But my guess is it's in there. My guess is that it's in there. Another question about the head is, how will I remind myself of these characteristics? So again, if there's something in somebody that you see and you're like, oh my goodness, I want to live that way. I want to have some of those characteristics in my life. How are you going to remind yourself of those? I don't know, maybe it's note cards. Maybe it's sticky notes on your mirror. I don't know. Right? But if we don't have some of these characteristics, how are we going to try to develop them? Heart, real quick. Ask yourself, how does my pride get in the way from following well? The questions get harder. Like what is it potentially about the inside of me and my sinful nature and that kind of stuff, even though it's redeemed? What is it that quite possibly part of my pride gets in the way from me following well? I don't know. Is it afraid that somebody else gets the credit? You ever felt like you did the work and your boss got the credit? Okay. Right? I mean, is that part of it? And so I've got to make sure I let everybody else know that it was me and not them. Do I know the tells of my pride beginning to manifest? When do I start noticing that pride is rearing its ugly head in my life? I know for me, it's when I get like snicker under my breath in meetings when somebody else says something. Or somebody else is talking and I think, oh man, I've heard what they have to say. I'm going to stop listening. Like I know what they are in my life, right? But I think asking yourself and knowing where those warning signs are, just like the warning signs on your dash, right? Your warning says, change your oil. Like your car's still working, but if you don't change your oil, that's what we're talking about here. What are those warning signs that you can begin to identify in your own life about pride? Ask yourself, what are reasons, healthy or unhealthy, that make me pause in following a leader above me? And those are going to happen, right? You're just like, follow first. I'm not, what are these? Whether they're healthy or unhealthy. Just because you have a pause doesn't mean it's unhealthy. But just identifying that and being able to ask yourself some diagnostic questions. I mean, maybe there's a character thing that you see in that leader, and you got to figure out what to do with that. How am I going to respond? What am I going to do? And one of my favorite books of all time is a book called A Tale of Three Kings. It's a book I should read every 6 months. But anyway, it's about, how do you, it's called like a study in brokenness. But the idea is it's about King David and how did he follow King Saul, who was a leader. So what do you do when you're a leader, when you have an abusive leader above you? And then it talks about Absalom, his son. So what do you do when you're a leader and in a sense you have an abusive person underneath you? Like we're not here to talk about that book, but it's one that's revolutionized the way that I think. I'm not sure it's revolutionized my heart yet, but it's revolutionized the way that I think. Hands. Here's some quick questions. Ask your boss, what are ways I can support you better publicly and privately? It's a great conversation to have with somebody who is above you. Hey, what are some ways that I can do that? And then follow those. You're like, but I'm not sure I want the answer to him. Yeah, I understand. I'm not sure I can handle what she's going to say to me. But I think the question is worthwhile. All right, here we go. Last one here. What makes it easy to follow me and what makes it difficult to follow me? That's something you can ask your teammates. Somebody's on the same level as you. Level's a weird word, but let me use it, right? We have the same kind of title in the organization or in a business or whatever. We're both small group leaders at church. Or if you really want to get to the point where, and I guess don't ask a question that you're not ready for the answer. But let's say you are a small group leader. What would it be like to say, hey, we got a couple minutes left tonight. Do you guys mind thinking about, or maybe think about this and let me know on the side, what makes it easy to follow me and what makes it difficult? And then you got to be ready because they're like, well, sometimes you don't listen. What do you mean I don't listen to you? Duh. So I'm saying is some of that is we can begin to learn things about ourselves by being vulnerable and open to have them ask some of those things of us. All right. Ready for a table talk? Here you go. Here's what I want you to look at. Who have you seen follow first modeled in an effective and inspiring way? And then inappropriately, potentially, that you've seen somebody who had this idea of they didn't know the language. They didn't come to the seminar, right? But this idea of following first. Where have you seen it done in an inspiring way? And then where have you seen it gone wrong? And it might be your life or it might be somebody else's life. Ready? Go.
So we are going right back into our marks of a leader. Scott kicked us off with this first one, which is follow first. And as we go into this is going to be really interesting because I really wish that if there was a way, it's going to be sounds really weird. If there's a way for me to know your brain in this next section, I wish I could see the thought bubbles pop up and what's coming next, because I think that there's going to be a really high probability that this is going to irk some of you, this next one. It's going to challenge some of you. It's going to give a sense of, really? That's what it is? In a alleviating kind of a way, potentially even, all over the place. Because where we're going for the number 2 mark is serve always. If follow first, it's almost like these aren't ranked per se, but we wanted to give them some type of an order. And so we say follow first is first, and then serve always is second. And so as we start to unpack serve always, you're like, Tony, why would that one maybe challenge me or frustrate me or cause a sense of relief? Well, let me try to unpack a little bit. What is Gateway's stance on what is this idea of serve always? Well, let's talk about what it's not. There's a bunch of things of what it's not. Number one, it is certainly not workaholism. That is not whatsoever what we would say is to serve always. Well, Gateway Church says serve always, so I got to always put my head down to the grind and not stop going. No, that is turning your work into an idol. That is not okay. That is not healthy. So we are not workaholics, because that neglects rest and relationships, and really it leads to burnouts. What's number 2 that it's not? It's not tunnel vision. It's not that it neglects your team's needs, your priorities, and their inputs. It's not this idea of, I'm just going to do what I do, how I do it, when I do it, and it's about my tasks and my priorities, and I'm going to serve, and there could be that noble intent to it, but I am not listening to the people around me. And that is not what serve always is. Number 3, it's not the savior complex. And the savior complex, in my opinion, is it neglects human fragility, teamwork, and a word that we as leaders sometimes really don't like or really stink at, delegation. The savior complex is this idea of if I don't, who will? if I don't do it, this task is gonna flop. Oh, if I don't do it, then it's not gonna get the attention that it deserves. Oh, but if I just do it, everything is gonna be better if I just do it. Oh, here, let me do it. Ever had that moment before? The savior complex, it neglects the fact that we are fragile human beings with limits. It neglects teamwork and it neglects delegation. We'll unpack a little bit more of that in a moment. Number 4, what is it not? It's not the tyranny of the urgent. What is the tyranny of the urgent? The tyranny of the urgent is you wake up in the morning and you look at your task list that has like 7 things, and oh my gosh, every single thing is the number 1 priority and needs to get done right now. Red flags all over, like I need to get it done right now, and you are driven by everything is urgent. And that is a tyrant. And the fact of the matter is some of us, me, have lived in that space. Maybe you're feeling that right now. But what does that do? That neglects prioritization. It neglects wisdom, and it neglects discipline. So what is serving always? What it is not is we're not living under this. Everything is urgent, 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 everything is urgent. That's not what we're doing. Number 5 is serving always is not just being a yes man or woman. It's not oh, I'm going to do it all the times, forever and always. And anytime you say it, I'm going to say yes every single time. You're like, well, that seems slightly contradictory to what it means to serve always. We'll get there in a second. But what I would say is that it is not being a yes man or woman, because that neglects boundaries and self-care. A couple of really smart people that I like to follow. John Maxwell, he says this: great leaders are willing to sacrifice their own personal interests for the good of the team. The best leaders are always servants first. Follow first, serve always. Simon Sinek, he's a leadership guru. He says this: a leader's job is not to do the work others. Is not to do the work of. I didn't write that right. It's to help others figure out how to do it themselves. Do the work themselves. That's probably what it is. It's figuring out how to do it themselves, to get things done and to succeed beyond what they thought possible. Sorry, I botched that sentence. I'm human. John Maxwell, let's go back to him. True leadership is serving others, not serving yourself. Now, there's going to be a tension that we're going to hold as we unpack what it is. And I want to say there is a deep tension in what we're about to unpack of what it actually is. Number 1, what is it? First off, it's a lens. It's a lens of I'm going to see a need and meet a need. And I love this. When I worked at Chick-fil-A for 5 years at Chick-fil-A down in Maryland, that was one of the things that they trained us in. It was like, hey, like you are just in the dining room. You walk around. What you're supposed to do, your job is to see a need and meet a need. It's that simple. Just do it. I'm like, all right, cool. So our job as leaders, as we serve always, is our lens is we see a need and meet a need. However, it's also second discernment. Because the fact of the matter is that there are needs all over the place, true? In your jobs, in your families, within your friend groups, there are needs all over the place. And you can stress the heck out of yourself if you try to meet every single need of every single person. So there's a discernment factor that's needed as we serve always of, okay, well, who am I going to serve? And that sounds like, oh, I'm the judge of who's the one is worthy of being served. No, you're just trying to have discernment of your time, your resources, and your finite body. A discernment of how do I choose to serve this day? And then how do I go about doing it? Number 3, it's efficiency. Empty themselves with themselves. You're like, that doesn't make sense whatsoever. That is very true. Let me explain it. To serve always as a leader, we are called to empty ourselves with our authentic selves. You empty yourself with who you are, not trying to be like someone else. How often have you tried to mimic another leader or copy or compare yourself to another leader, trying to be something that you're not? So what is serving always? If you truly want to serve, you are emptying who you are with your genuine, authentic, and raw self. We need you. We don't need you trying to be like someone else. If we believe that God doesn't make mistakes and that you are specifically and uniquely and intricately wired and woven with unique giftings for your team, why would you try to be someone else? But we do it all the time. We're tempted to do it all the time. So it's efficiency of emptying myself with myself. 4, here we go. Here's where it's going to start getting a little tricky. There's an eagerness in serving always to embrace caring for their families and their finite body. If you go back to Scott's of Follow First, if you go under the what it is, number 4, it reads, caring more about the mission than self. Well, that sounds slightly contradictory. What do we do with that? Because I think that as leaders, if we are choosing to serve and serve and serve and serve and serve and serve and serve, and we neglect our finite body, it's gonna give out. So if you are looking to holistically serve, you also need to look at, let me use phrasing that sounds really weird, how are you choosing to serve yourself? But I'm not saying it in a prideful way, in a selfish way. I'm saying, no. You need to understand you have a finite body and you have weaknesses and limitations. You have a family that maybe you're supposed to pour into and love and pay attention to every now and then. So, is there an eagerness for you within your own job to serve at your job? Awesome, yes, check the box, great. But do you have an eagerness to serve your family at home? Do you have an eagerness to tend to the body and the emotions and the psyche, the things that we kind of don't like paying attention to, but we kind of need to? Number 5, boundaries that give space to serve all the vital aspects of life. Emphasis on the all. Again, leaders, learners in the room, we are trying to kind of walk a very tight rope here. Serving always is, yes, I'm giving everything that I have to my team, to my organization, but I'm also making sure I have the right stuff in the tank to keep moving forward. That I'm not running on fumes and depleted and getting depressed and angered and just all the nasty stuff that flows out of us when we are not healthy. So how are you choosing to have boundaries with your job? As we go through each of our segments, we have, again, a person that we think kind of models this fairly well. And so we have Indra Nooyi, and she is, if you look at the blurb that says that she is the former CEO of PepsiCo for 12 years. I have a neat little bio about her of how we think that she embodied serve always, but again, both sides of the coin. And so as we keep moving forward here, let's look at the head. Because again, as we look at this, for those of you who maybe need another word to help with this, the head, heart, hands, we're really thinking about application of these terms, of these marks of a leader. What is the application that we can challenge ourselves with, we can push ourselves with moving forward? So let's think of the head space. Let's think of the cognitive space. Let's think of the intellectual space. How do we challenge ourselves in that? Number 1, let's have clear expectations on what serving looks like on your team. Have you defined that? If you're a boss, if you lead a team, have you defined clearly what serving is? Defining terms is so vital and necessary. That's why we started off the seminar with defining terms. Do you have clear expectations that your team cognitively knows or your family knows of what it means to serve as a family? Number 2, ask yourself, what are mental roadblocks that stop you from serving your family and your finite body? Are there any mental roadblocks up in here? Wrestlings of doubt. I'm not good enough. Oh, I need to prove myself to my boss. I need to prove myself to God. I need to prove myself to my spouse. What's the mental roadblock that maybe puts your job on its pedestal and your family and your body down the drain? That's real stuff that we got to think about. How about the heart? I love and hate this question. Do I give 100% of myself to my work, or just the appearance of 100%? Back in college, a mentor challenged me when I was kind of going on and on about like how I'm doing so much within the college and how I'm doing so much in serving and so on and so forth. But then he knows me really, really well. So he asked me, he's like, but Tony, like, so you're doing all these really cool things. That's great. But like, are you giving 100%, or are you kind of slacking off because you know you can give your 90 and it looks like 100 other people? I'm like, dang it, I don't like you anymore. Because the fact is that we're called to give excellence. What is excellence? 100% of what we have and who we are. Are we choosing to, if you know that, again, let me get away with tough terminology, but if you know you're around people who are slackers, and you could do 75% and get away with it and it looks good, is that pleasing to God? Is that pleasing to your boss? So am I giving 100% of who I am? Or am I just giving the appearance of 100% and fooling people? Number 2, what am I doing to practice family and self-care? Family, care, self-care. What am I doing? Let's go to the hands for a second. Ask your teammates, what needs can I help meet today, this week, this month, this year? In the name of serve always. Maybe you need to go to a teammate, go to a boss, go to a colleague, go to a spouse, go to your kid. What needs can I help meet today, this week, and this month? In the name of serving always. And lastly, practically speaking, grabbing your calendar and saying, hey, I'm going to block out times in your week for rest and for family time. It's wild, the fact that when the busier we get, the things that get knocked out of our life are the things that fill our tank usually. The busier we get, the things that usually fulfill us are the things that get kicked out first. But the more and more we kick things out of our life that are good, fill us up, bring joy to our life, if we kick those things out first and we keep doing the things that drain us, where's that recipe going to land? So how are we choosing to practice self-care as leaders, serving every aspect of our life? So that being said, let's talk for a moment. I just want you to be honest around your table. This might have been a weird thing to hear, like serving always. That wasn't the angle I thought that they were going to go. So I specifically want to zero in on this just for a moment. What do you think about the idea of self and family care being in the serving always mark? Be honest. We invite you to disagree if you disagree. Take some time. Go for it. So as much as I could go on and on and on and on and on about this one, we're going to keep moving forward from serve always to our third mark, which is cultivate clarity. The third mark of a leader, we would say, is that they cultivate clarity. And like we've done for the first 2 marks, let's take a moment to unpack what it is not. So what is not cultivating clarity? Number 1 is not micromanaging. It is not creating a sense of distrust, hinders innovation, and really micromanaging just kind of ticks people off. Has anyone ever been around a micromanager at all? Yeah, it's not a fun thing. It irks you. It gets out. You're like, come on, like stop it. Like let me have some breathing space, please. And of course, some of y'all are probably snickering of like, nah, it's probably me if I'm being like really, really honest. So you maybe need to think about that one for a second. But like, we all can give into micromanaging. Let's be real also. We all can do that. And within our leadership, within our families, with wherever it may be. But that is not, when we're looking to cultivate clarity as a leader, we are not looking to micromanage. So we want to get that very straight off the bat because that just creates a sense of distrust. It hinders innovation, and it just annoys the heck out of people. Number 2, It is not over communicating. Now, I personally really, I'm a communicator, but like I love to communicate. I love to verbal process. I love to think out loud. I love to communicate with people. If anything, I would say I'd rather over communicate than under communicate. Generally speaking, as a leader, that's personally what I like to say I would do. However, there's a line of over communication that just makes people anxious, or they just start tuning you out because you talk too much. I can only believe that's happened to me a ton of times, especially with my dear wife, Mary Beth. When you over-communicate way too much, it creates anxiety, it's tension, and it just is counterproductive. So what is it not? It's not over-communicating. Number 3 is it is not rigidity. It is not rigidity. This idea of rigidity, okay, I'm trying to guide my organization in vision, in mission, in values, in healthiness, awesome, all good. But if you have such a tight grip around it, that's rigid. And what's that going to do? It's going to stifle flexibility, stifle adaptability, and stifle creativity. If you have such a tight rein on your team, my guess is that might be stifling. So that's not what it is. Number 4, it's not perfectionism. It's not perfectionism. Because what does that do? If we are choosing to live in perfectionism, we're just creating fear and invulnerability. Because if you're around your team, you're around your family, and it's all about being perfect, and no one ever wants to slip up, don't move, don't breathe here. And that's not clarity. That's suffocating. So we're not about perfectionism because that creates fear and invulnerability. Number 5 is cultivating clarity is not about autonomy. What's autonomy? It's this idea of it's a me show. I got the vision and I am charging this organization. I am doing everything I can to lead us, and I'm at the helm, and I am the carrier of the keys to the vision and the mission and the values and the healthiness. It's not a one-woman show. It's not a one-man show. So we would say when we cultivate clarity, it's not really meant to be a leader at the helm thing. So we'll unpack a little bit what that means. Because usually if that person is autonomous in that way, they kind of put up a wall and has an inability to receive feedback or ideas. Patrick Lencioni, another really smart person, says this: clarity is the result of a shared vision, effective communication, and a deep understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I love that Patrick threw in strengths and weaknesses in what it means to cultivate clarity. It's not just about what we're good at. Let's also have a real dialogue of here's kind of what we're not good at. Let's create some clarity around both ends of the spectrum. Patrick also says, teamwork requires that everyone's vision be clear, concise, and aligned. Only then can the collective force be unleashed to achieve success. Let's go back to Simon. Let's see if I can quote Simon well this time. Clarity and communication is the key to success in any team. When everyone understands their roles, goals, and expectations, the team can work together toward a common vision with greater focus and efficiency. So let's talk about what it is. What is cultivating clarity? Number 1. Well, we would say this. Cultivating clarity, it's the highest priority. Objectives and goals are spelled out clearly and consistently. Clearly and consistently. Why does your organization exist? Why does your team have a name? Why does your family exist? Why is your sports team here? Why do you live on that street? Why do you have that friend group? Let's spell out clearly and then consistently. We're not just going to spell it out and then tuck it away. We're going to bring it up over and over and over and over again multiple times. Number 2 is providing space for calibration and course correction. What's another word for calibration? Troubleshooting. We're just going to get together as we cultivate clarity. We're going to sit and we're going to calibrate. We're going to spend time and say, okay, what's not going too well right now, and how can we do better at it? And having space for not just you as the leader, but to get input from your team. And are you doing that? Providing space for calibration and course correction. Number 3 is a sandbox to collaborate, there we go, collaborate within their strengths and competently play in. Fill in whatever word you want, because I don't know what word's supposed to be there. Yep. What do you think? Play in the sandbox? Yes. Thank you. Thanks for providing clarity. I love it. So, we are choosing to make a sandbox, give direction. Scott, I'm gonna out you here. I didn't actually think about this until this very moment when I think about Sandbox. When I first came to Gateway Church, Scott said to me, hey, Tony, as the pastor of students and leadership development, I want you to help create a leadership development culture. And I'm like, awesome. That sounds exciting, super, super cool, and I can't wait to do that. However, I need a little bit of a sandbox to play in. And he said, yeah, sure, yes, but you're the leadership development guy, so I want you to go ahead and just create whatever you want. I trust you. I'm like, Scott, I love that you trust me. Thank you for trusting me, but I need your vision as my lead pastor to give me a little bit of clarity on the box that you want me to play in. I'll mess around in the box, do whatever in the box, you just need to give me the box. And he's like, no, but you're the leadership development guy. You make the box. I'm like, no, you're not hearing me. I want you to give me a box. Finally, after 3 conversations, we finally understood. We went to a whiteboard. We had a great drawing out session of what is it going to be for me to kind of help guide leadership development here at Gateway Church. But you need to be willing to draw a sandbox at times for your people, to collaborate within their strengths and to competently play in. How are you choosing to do that? How are you choosing to do that? Number 4 is disturbing ownership. Distributing, there we go. Distributing ownership. I'm disturbed, what can I say? Distributing ownership for building the culture you want to see flourish. So here's where the rubber meets the road with cultivating clarity. It's not just about you as a leader. It's about shared ownership. How are you distributing the ownership of clarity? Does your team know the mission? Do they know the values? Do they know the culture? Are they living out? Are you inviting them in? Sometimes you're like, no, but they shouldn't have to feel invited. They're part of our team. Sometimes people need explicit permission. Have you explicitly invited them to help shape the culture that you want to see flourish? Number 5 is a balance of empowerment to confidence and accountability to cautiousness. So we built a sandbox earlier. If you step out of the sandbox, you might get slapped on the wrist. There is a cautiousness and an accountability that is needed as we cultivate clarity. Because we're trying to be rigid? No, because we're trying to have boundaries, and boundaries are healthy and they're good. Because if you are moving outside of what is the clear vision, the clear goals, the clear mission, if you're moving outside of that, then you're not really going to hit the target of who you're trying to serve or what you're trying to accomplish or what product you're trying to put out. It's going to be messy. So is there a balance that you are choosing to empower people to the confidence to live in the vision, live in the mission, but also is there an accountability to, hey, let's still be cautious in the way that we do this? Someone who we think did this very, very well is a guy by the name of Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple. And there's a neat little blurb about him as well, about what does it mean, how did he cultivate clarity within Apple itself. So now let's go over to our applicational piece of the head, the heart, and the hands. So what's the head? Cognitively, intellectually, what if you spelled out the vision, the mission, the values, and regularly come back to them with your team? Do you have that? If you have it, is it like a scrap sheet of paper that's tucked under your drawer that no one else knows? Does your whole team know it? Is it clearly spelled out? Maybe that's an exercise that you need to do within your team. I personally love the idea of having for your family, having a vision statement for your family. Why do we exist as a family? Or how about why do you exist as an individual person having a vision, a mission statement for your life? Maybe thinking in that way. Number 2 is asking your teammates, how do you see your role as an overflow of our mission? How do you see your role as an overflow of our mission? Simply said, does what you do, can you connect what you do back to our mission? Because here's what I'd say. If you can't connect what you're doing back to your mission, I would submit to you that you shouldn't be doing it. If you can't connect what you're doing back to why you exist as an organization, why you exist as a team, then I think I would say you're not efficiently using your time. So how do you see your role as an overflow of the mission? And is there anything that's currently unclear or ambiguous about your role? This is a great question to ask someone that you lead. Is there anything currently unclear or ambiguous about your role? Let's talk about it. It's a win-win if you get to figure out what was unclear. How about the heart? Number 1, ask yourself, what areas are you holding on to with rigidity that might need to be delegated? Again, here's that word again. We don't like delegation. What are areas that you're holding on to that, maybe you just need to relinquish control? Relinquish the perfectionism. And say, you know what, I should empower someone else to do this. Number 2, ask yourself, how okay are you with soliciting feedback and critique? That's a heart gut check question. How okay are you with soliciting feedback and critique? And how often do you? Are you a leader who's okay with asking for feedback from your people? Or if you're not the boss, even just from your teammates. How about the hands? Number 1 is operation, delegate, cultivation. Totally made this up. But operation, delegate, cultivation. I know, it's totally a Tony thing. What would it look like that you are going to go, you're going to look at your job, you're going to look at everything you do. You're going to do like a little whiteboard exercise or an iPhone note exercise. You're going to write down every single thing that you do. And then you're going to look at it, be really honest. Is there something that you could delegate? There's something that you could relinquish. I'm not sure if it's Craig Rochelle or some other really smart person, but he said, if someone else can do that task that you're doing 75% as good as you, give it to them. If they can do a task 75% of what you're able to do, go ahead and give it to them. Delegate. So are there some shoulder tappings, some training, some one-on-one, some team meetings, et cetera, that you need to take some time and say, you know what, yeah, you should, I'm going to empower you. I'm going to train you. Number 2 is plan events and celebrate wins through the why. What is this? I've recently been reminded of this, even in the past couple of months, is that the more and more, when we get into the daily grind of doing the what is our tasks, sometimes the mundane or the difficult things that we do every single day, every single week, every single month, if we don't remind ourselves of the why, why am I doing this? It's really easy to let yourself check out, become numb, become apathetic. Like, why do you do what you do? Like, remind yourself of the passion. Remind yourself of the excitement. Remind yourself of the wins. Honestly, we need to celebrate wins probably more often than we do, generally speaking, because there's a lot of messed upness in this world that bogs us down. So how are we choosing to plan events for your team, for clarity, choosing to take moments to celebrate wins through the why? When you remind yourself of the why, it empowers you to do the what. When you remind yourself of the why, it empowers you to be able to do the what, because the what is burdensome at times. So let's remind ourselves of the why. So here's what I want to do is I want to take a moment in this reflection. Actually, this is going to be there's a lot of words up here. It's in your packet as well, but this is going to be a personal reflection one.
Can I talk about Jesus again just really fast? It's like my favorite person to talk about. So think about Jesus just for a second. He followed first. Philippians chapter 2 would indicate that to us really, really well, right? That he was obedient and came to earth and lived this life. And so he followed first. Again, we talked about that. He judged as the Father told him to judge. He spoke as the Father told him to speak. He did this. And then think about the serve always one. What did he say? I didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. And yet even on that serve part, that serve always, think about those times in Scripture where like people are like, where's Jesus? We need him. And he was just spending time with his Father. So part of that had to do with following first, but I'll be honest, part of it had to do with serving always. And he realized who he was a servant of, and then cultivate clarity. This is one that when I think about Jesus, I'm like, I've always been amazed, right? Jesus is called the master teacher, and yet most of the time in Scripture, you see the students going, what? What did he just say? I'm like, is that really a master teacher? But when you think about it, yes, it is. He had a way to get people to think and to process. And I was thinking about one, like the cultivating clarity. He could have just said, I am the Messiah, but what did he do? He just said, who do people say that I am? Like, what do people say about who I am and what I am? And so I don't know. Jesus, man. It's just, it's fun. All right, here's the next one. We're going to talk about valuing results and relationship. We think this is another mark of what needs to happen in leadership, and this is a toughie. What I mean by that is like trying to figure out how these things go hand in hand. And what does it look like to value the people on your team and value the people that you are serving, but also trying to get stuff done? And maybe you've been in situations where the team cared a lot about each other, but you didn't really get anything done. Or then you've been in situations where you feel like, oh my word, we got so much done, but no one even cared that my eyes were not in it today. And don't you want to be with a leader who's like, hey, let's get after the agenda today. Whoa, what, your eyeballs right now. Like what, what's going on? Like what's on your heart? And trying to figure out how to balance those. Again, I'm in a weird spot today because I get a chance to work with so many of you who are in the room, and you know what it's like to talk about like the right type of leader, and then you try to give yourself grades on all these, and you're like, ooh. I mean, Tony already gave you a grade on my ability to cultivate clarity, right? It's like, ooh. So these are hard, but these are aspirational. You have actual values and aspirational values. I would tell you these are aspirational values that we're trying to go after. But here we go. What it is not, I'm going to go through these really quick. Sacrificing one for the other. Sacrificing one for the other. And again, this one's really hard, and potentially are there seasons or times when you have to say to your team, hey, listen, I realize we're going to be pooped at the end of this. I do care about you, but yes, right? Yes, but this is not sacrificing one for the other. This isn't about being a people pleaser, and this one's really, really difficult because on the one hand, you might value relationships so much because you're a people pleaser. And that might mean that you drive your team really, really hard and you don't care about your relationship with them because there's these people out here that you want to be a people pleaser with. I'm a preacher, right? So that's what happens, right? So I got all these people that I'm like trying to figure out, and I want to be a people pleaser with them. And so what do I end up doing? Like slave driving the team and not even caring about them because I'm saying it's all over the place, but it's not about being a people pleaser. Number 3, compromising quality or progress. See how these things are in tension? So I don't think we can go, well, the quality's not really there. We're not doing it, but we like each other and we have fun as a team. It's how do these things go together? Not controlling. We could put controlling for all of these so far, right? But it's not controlling. It's not being inconsistent. And I'll be honest, I think this is another area that I have a lot to work on. I think there'll be sometimes that you will show up in a meeting with me and I'll say, let's just put that stuff off to the side. Like, how are you doing? And then there's other times where I'm working with somebody and they'll start telling me about how they're doing, and they can just see that I've clocked out because it's like, I ain't got time to listen to your problems. We got work to do. And so it's very possible that people that spend time with me have to ask themselves when they walk in the door, well, which Scott am I going to get today? So I'm just telling you, you don't want to be in a spot where your people wonder which one they're going to get, right? And so that's why this inconsistency thing. Doggone it. All right, here we go. Simon Sinek, we already messed up his quotes every time. All right, here we go. Value, results, and relationship. Like what is it, right? What is it? And I would just say, setting clear goals and expectations. Setting clear goals and expectations. And, that's a hard one. And, but I believe that's why that clarity piece is so important. Come on, remember when you were a student and you had a teacher who gave you an assignment, and at first you thought it was just you that didn't understand the assignment, and then you looked at everybody else and they're all going like, you never mind to work really, really hard on a project if you knew what the clear expectations were. It is no fun when you're trying to kill yourself for a good grade and you don't even know what you're trying to strive for, right? So this idea of clear goals and expectations. What are we here for? Why are we here for it? Where are we at in that? Empowering your team to take ownership. Like, whose goals are these? Are they your goals or are they our goals? Do I have to do it the way that you would want it set up, or am I allowed to have freedom to try to figure that out? And then again, that's why that example by Tony was honestly a good one. I shouldn't have made fun of the fact he made fun of me, but I'm just saying, like, there's this piece about, like, hey man, like, I'm just saying, just go. And what's he going? He goes, man, I will go as fast as I can. I just don't know where the parameters are. And so knowing those things and setting those up. And then I think when there's clarity, people will want to provide more ownership to the piece, and they'll feel like they're going to be a part of it. Right? It's like, this is where we're going. And then can we allow other people to be a part of, well, how are we going to get there? But the clarity of knowing where the goal is going to be. Number 3 is fostering of a culture of collaboration and trust. Right? I mean, that's just a relationship and the results piece. Like, we've done that before as a seminar too, right? The trust thing. The 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? That had to do with trust, and so there's some part of that. Like when you have to work with people that you don't trust, what do you do? So as a leader, like, how do you build that trust? How do you care about that? And I think it fits into this idea of results in relationship. Yeah. Number 4, balancing the needs of the team and the business. Balancing the needs of the team and the church. Balancing the needs of the team and the individual, like whatever that part is. I mean, how do you balance those things? And I'm telling you, there are seasons, right? There are times and there are spaces where but overall, like, how are we doing this? And I would tell you the goal would be, this is not balancing as in 50-50. Right? Sometimes we talk about that. Like we talk about that here at Gateway Church. One of our values is we seek to balance grace and truth. And sometimes people are like, oh, that means like 50% of truth and 50% of grace. No, it means 100% of truth and 100% of grace. That's what I mean by balance. And so, like, how do I do that? How do I care so deeply about the team and the whatever? Number 5, being adaptable and flexible. And that's hopefully where this follow first piece. You see how they kind of build on each other? Like, if I follow first and you follow first as a leader, you can show the team what it means to be adaptable and flexible. And the team is going to be more than willing. Those who are just go-getters and, like, don't care about interpersonal relationships and need to, right? They can be adaptable and flexible. No, this is part of who we are here, and it's part of our culture and where we're going. And then those other people who are like, no, you know what? Like, I've got an issue at home right now, and it's gonna be hard for me to, like, stay focused in this meeting, but I need to be adaptable and flexible because right now we do need to see some results. So I got to try to figure out a way to compartmentalize little bits of that. It's a tension. But trying to figure out how to do that and what that potentially looks like. Howard Schultz, interesting guy, right? You like Starbucks coffee. So I think he did, and there's a little bio about him. I think, honestly, there were some things that Howard Schultz did not do well. But there's a part of this valuing results in relationship. And one of the things that he brought into Starbucks was, right, he was one of the first companies that even if you were a part-time employee, you got health care benefits. And the world looked at it like, what? Well, I think it's part of it because he valued the people that were on the team. Right? So looking at that, and so you can, like, study him if you wanted to and to take a look at that. And And again, I think taking a look at Jesus would be interesting to figure out, did Jesus do this? Value results in relationship. Like, how did he do that, and what did that look like and mean? All right. Head, let's look at the head part. Ask yourself, which am I prone to emphasize more? We did this as a staff a couple weeks ago, and it was just fascinating. Like, again, probably inside of you, your default is to want to land on one side of those, right? It's part of the reason why, honestly, I don't have very many friends. And this is not oh, poor Scott. The deal is this, though. I like to work on a project. And if I've never worked on a project with you, it's almost like I don't know how to be your friend. And some of you are sitting at the table going the exact opposite. Well, I don't know how to work on a project with you unless I'm your friend. You see what I mean? Which one of us is right? So there's something about this that we don't, ask yourself, which one are you more prone to? And then you'll be able to find yourself falling into that. So because I know that I'm more prone to results than relationship, when I start getting frustrated in a meeting, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'll bet you it's because I'm not seeing enough results. What am I missing relationship-wise? Okay? Here's another one. Do you know who on your team values results or relationship more? And how are you fueling their results tank or relationship tank? That's another one as a leader, right? You gotta know your people and know when you can drive hard and when you need to pull back and when it's time to ask questions about their family and when it's time to just stay on business. But like, again, if they're more prone to one of those, like how do we make sure that tank is being filled? Not just whichever one you are prone to. Although, wouldn't the world just be almost better if everybody thought like you did? No? I think it would be great. Anyway, heart. Ask yourself, which have I preferred in leaders above me and why? And my guess is it's going to be whichever one you prefer, but I do think that would be a question to ask. When I think about the leaders that have led me, which one of those did they prefer, and why did I prefer that in them? That why question is like super critical to get at and to think through. What are the dangers of emphasizing one over the other? Now, some of that we've already talked about, right, in the what it's not and the what it is, but like think about that. Just spend some time. Man, if my organization or my team or my whatever, we all have fun. We haven't won a game in like 4 years, but we have fun together, right? Maybe that's okay. Cultivating clarity. Which one do we care about? Do we care about the scoreboard or do we care about the team relationship? So it's figuring that out and then knowing how that's going to play. But what are the dangers? What are the dangers in that and the overemphasis of one over the other one? Hands. How will I know if I'm balancing this well? How will you know if you're balancing this? And again, balancing, think 100% and 100%. But how do I know if I'm balancing these things well? Some of that's going to be asking people on your team. Some of it's asking shareholders, or again, however that works. And there's lots of different places to figure out how you're doing it. But I think a question would be, you got to ask yourself that. Now, do you see already how this becomes a scorecard for you? You're going to bed at night and you're a leader. You're like, did I follow first today? Man, did I serve always? Like, was that my mindset? Man, I was in that meeting, and did I help cultivate clarity or did I not cultivate clarity? I did. That's a win. That's a win. And now we're to this one about valuing results and relationship. Like, where did I mess up or overemphasize something? Have a conversation with your team on the difference between balance and prioritization of results in relationships. So just, again, I think it's conversation. And some of us may be going, I ain't got time for conversation. We got work to do. I understand, but do you realize how much more productive the work will be down the road when you set some of these things up right now? All right, table talk time, right? Why might leadership boards, and boards, I don't know how you want to do that. Think about a board, think about the trustees, think about, I don't know, whatever. What would be another term for that in case you work in an organization that doesn't have a board? Elders, great, you're elders in your church. What was another one? Management, perfect. The management team. However you need to contextualize that, right? Why might, however you contextualize that, care more about one than the other? Okay? We're going to talk about that in a second. Why might they care about more one than the other? And if you had to care more about more than one than the other, which one is best? So we just told you that they're equal, but like if you had to pick one, which one is best? All right, can you do that at your table for a couple minutes? All right, can we do a large group think just for a second? Let's go with the first one. Why? Which one might, like a board or the management team or whatever, emphasize? Which one might they emphasize more? Results. I think. If you said, I don't know if there's a right answer there, but I mean, think about that. If there's a board of directors of a company who is trying to make money, chances are when push comes to shove, they're going to care about results more than they are people, right? So it's just figuring that out and knowing that and realizing in a sense, if you're a follower, what does your board care most about? And now I would couch what you need to talk to them about in terms of what they care most about, while at the same time talking about the health of the team, right? But it's knowing that. And then if you had to care more about one than the other, which is best? Worst question of the night, right? Exactly. I hope that's what you came up with. I hope at your table you're like, that's the dumbest question they've asked all night. Because it was the dumbest question, right? On purpose. But the reason why it was a dumb question is because I'm telling you, in our DNA probably, we want to go to one side or the other. And so it's just realizing that about ourselves, even when we're not thinking about it, all right? All right, let's go with the last one, Tony.
Well, it's funny because like literally 5 minutes before we began, I went up to Scott and I was like, hey, looks like I was punching in all the stuff on the PowerPoint and everything, and he made this question. I was like, which is best? Do we have one that we think is best? Like, I was actually confused, like thinking that was a bad question, and that was the point.
It is a bad question.
The point it was supposed to be a bad question in a way to make you guys talk. So let's hit the fifth and final mark of leader. Are we ready?
Yes, go.
Let's do it. So as we have gone down this list of follow first, serve always, cultivate clarity, value results in relationships, we finally hit the fifth one, that is humble confidence. And this one, we love that it's at the bottom, because it's almost like you get to the bottom of all these things, and at the bedrock of who we are, there is this humble confidence that we ought to have. So let's unpack as we've done. For those of you who like structure, I hope that this has been helpful for you, that we've been going over what it's not, and then we do what it is. We give you a figure that's alive or a historical figure, and then we give you some head, heart, and hands. I hope this has been a helpful model for you. So that being said, let's go to what it's not. And I love this because it really does help maybe put some phrases behind maybe what you felt. So number one is misplaced confidence. And the phrase that I want to put behind it is, I'm all that. Maybe you put way too much confidence in your abilities. Maybe you know someone who puts way too much confidence in their abilities. Maybe you know someone who's a little bit egotistical, maybe. Maybe you are an egotistical person. But the idea of I'm all that, that is not humble confidence. Number two, what it also is not, it's the other end of the spectrum. It's not dismissed greatness of you're really bad at receiving compliments. You're really bad at thinking, oh, I'm literally nothing, and you self-deprecate. So that is, friends, that is not humility, that's pride still. If you are, my definition of pride is turning yourself into an idol. Pride is turning yourself into an idol. So if I think that I'm all that in a bag of chips over here on the cocky side, that's pride. If I think that I'm nothing and worthless and shame on me, that's still pride. It's a wrong view of self. Misplaced confidence, dismissed greatness. Number three, steamroll express. My way or the highway. Have you ever been around a leader like that? Have you ever been that leader? And it's all about my way and my direction and my leadership and me. Steamroll express. That's not humble confidence. Number four, it's also not doormat timidity. It's not, hey, whatever you say. Whatever you want. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, boss. It's not doormat timidity. That's not humble confidence either. Number five, it's not a jarring roller coaster. It depends on the day. Am I going to be more of a humble Tony or am I going to be more of a confident Tony? Am I going to be more of a go-get-em kind of leader, or am I going to be what is it? Humble confidence is not like, oh, on the day I feel like, which one am I going to be? That's exhausting to be around a leader that you don't know what you're going to get. How about number six? It's actually the other way around. Conditional quid pro quo, which is really, it just depends on you. How I act is contingent upon how you are today. It's a transaction. It's conditional. What do I get in return? It's based off of how you are today. That's not humble confidence either. So we've lined up a ton of what humble confidence is not. So let's have a moment with Douglas MacArthur, who says this. He says, a true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. They do not set out to be a leader, but become one by the quality of their actions and the integrity of their intent. We're going to skip this quote for the sake of time, but it's a beautiful quote to read. Let's go over to what it is.
Yeah, so it's self-awareness. It's self-awareness. And, maybe that thing that Tony talked about I forgot, you're not sure which person you're going to get in the room. Like, that probably happens to a lot of us in a lot of different ways. But it's being self-aware and knowing yourself, and then knowing potentially which side of that you come off as. And what do you do with that? How do you manage? There's a term people talk about for leaders, like how do they manage their aura? That's weird, right? But it's just like sometimes as a leader, when you walk into the room, the temperature changes, or people now look to you, and if you haven't become self-aware about where you're at on that day or it messes everything up. So how self-aware are you? How self-aware am I? Openness to feedback, right? I mean, I think that's another one, and we as leaders can say, hey, give me feedback, right? And then people start to give you feedback, and then you either don't ever listen to it or have 77 reasons why whatever their feedback was dumb. And so like a genuine openness to feedback. And here's the part as leaders that if we could get and we can understand, when somebody actually gives us genuine feedback, it is a beautiful gift. And do you realize, and do I realize, the risk that person took in giving the feedback? Like, why else would they give? Now, we all know people who are jerks and they just want to give their feedback. But I'm talking about, like, when you actually have a relationship and it's just like, hey, can I tell you, this is how I received what you said. But anyway, being open to feedback. And remember the follow first thing? Like, if we can actually do this well, we have shown people how to respond to feedback as well. And we invite it in more ways. All right, number three, empathy for self and others. That goes both ways, right? Just being willing to understand your own, I was going to say fragility, what's your word? Finiteness, and trying to figure out what that looks like. But empathy. It goes a really long ways when you're working with people. And it's not a get out of jail free card, but what I'm saying is, as a leader, people will be more willing to handle some of the mistakes you make. Again, you don't use this as a card, but my point is, like, if you have genuine empathy for people and they can see that, and you have empathy for yourself, not just beating yourself up all the time or whatever. All right, number 4, willingness to learn and to teach. Right, let's to learn and to teach, and that's another one where we probably fall off on one side or the other. It's like, oh, I've got something to say. I've got to make sure I say it. But when you do have something to say it, right? But there's also a time to learn and to just be quiet and to listen. And so figuring out how to do that and be willing to do both of those in situations. Again, if you do that and you follow first, people are going to see that and they're going to know how to do it themselves. So number 5, practicing gratitude. Like I think, one, everybody wants to be around people who are just grateful to be around other people. And I think it helps both in this confidence thing and the humility piece if we are just really, really quick to show gratitude for other people's work and other people's accomplishments and what they've done. I mean, isn't that the type of person you want to be around? Like I do. And so doing that will help. And then, honestly, can you think about how gratitude, we can instantly think, oh, gratitude just has to do with humbleness. Well, I'd say no, gratitude has to do with confidence too. And here's what I mean by that. We have to be able to be confident enough to show gratitude in appropriate ways to people. It takes confidence to do that. In fact, some of us have been unsure how to give compliments to people because we're like, I might mess it up and I might say, no, there's a confidence level in that and a genuineness that kind of comes out. So that's some of the things about what it is. Nelson Mandela, right? I think South Africa, and this is where we all wish we would have paid attention more in school, and we would have learned more about him and who he is. But anyway, there's a bio sketch on there. But honestly, I think whether you are talking about the Christian space or the non-Christian space, when you think about somebody who has humble confidence, Mother Teresa is going to be near the top of the list. Nelson Mandela is not far behind. There was something about the way that man lived in the midst of all the things that he experienced and the way that he led that I think it's a really, really good example of humble confidence.
And so what we want to do is we want to fly through these last segments of head, heart, hands to give you your last table talk of the night. So head, self-awareness, deep dive. Take this S.H.A.P.E assessment. Scott referenced it earlier. And I will send an email out tomorrow to everyone who has signed up and is here tonight. And I will put the S.H.A.P.E assessment in there for you. If that's something that you would like to consider more about and learning more, again, this self-awareness idea. And then being willing to talk about S.H.A.P.E and how you are uniquely crafted and wired, maybe with your team or with your spouse or with a close friend or mentor, etc. Heart is number 1. Ask yourself, how well do I know myself? And what stirs and triggers pride in me? So again, pride has been a kind of a word that we've thrown around quite a bit tonight. But how well do I know myself and what triggers pride and gets these deeper levels of why? Number 2 is ask yourself, what team culture am I creating because of the versions of pride that exist in me? That's one to think about. What culture am I creating because of the pride that exists in me? Hands. Have a few trusted people that can deal, I call them all truth, no grace conversations to keep you accountable to pride. We love to live in grace and truth, but sometimes we just need someone who's going to speak the facts, speak truth. Do you have that person in your life? To keep you accountable to your own pride. Periodically ask your team to assess your humility and confidence. That's not fun. But I'm going to give you we'll give you a space actually to do that, not tonight, but through a resource that we're going to give you in just a moment. But before we do that, let's land on this last table talk question. We're going to give you 2 minutes. I want you to go back to the six things of what pride is not, or what humble confidence is not. Which one do you fall into when you are not healthy? Which one do you say? If I'm being honest, this is where I can maybe lean towards if I am not being healthy. Take 2 minutes and 2 minutes alone, and then we will end up our time. So we have gone through a fire hose of information. If you are feeling like a bit of a roller coaster, there is a little bit of intent behind it that's like, good. Because we want you to be able to take this resource and think through it and process over it and take it back to your spouse and take it back to your team, take it back to and process through some of this stuff further as we go, and not just sit in these 2 hours together. As amazing as it is, as much as we love to be able to have you here, we hope that it would go forward than 9:00 p.m. today. So as we end, a couple of last thoughts here. Scott, would you land us with any other final word of wisdom or insight as we talk about these 5 marks?
Yeah, I don't know if it's any bit of wisdom, but I will tell you this. There's like nothing like being a leader that God can use. There just isn't. Like when you feel like God has given you some abilities and the heart to want to lead, so like go. It's about being an overseer. But Scripture says if you set your heart on being an overseer, you desire a good thing. Like you desire a good thing. The other side of it is this, and this is the part that is scary, and I think it causes some to not move forward. But God will hold us accountable at the same time. In that same kind of area, but we who teach, think about it as a leader, will be judged more strictly. So isn't that a weird thing inside? Which is like, man, I feel like God wants me to go. But then also just realize that there's accountability and that there are people in your wake. And I think if we can hold those things side by side and keep trusting in the Lord, I think there's lots of great places to go. So if you desire to be a leader, check your heart. Realize that it's entrusted and it's temporary and you'll be held accountable, but it's a good thing. That's awesome.
And man, I would just love to say to all of us, like we said earlier in one of the marks, that it's not about perfectionism. And it can be real easy to walk away from this and think, man, I suck. like honestly, because even teaching this stuff, I feel inadequate. Dang it. I feel like I'm just not good at this stuff. But thank you, Jesus, for grace. We're not striving for perfection. We're striving for progress. So leader, how are you striving for progress? One step at a time. One mark at a time. Starting not even tomorrow morning when you get in your car. There's an opportunity that we want to leave with you. I think all of you have been you've listened to my instructions, well done. You can now flip the paper at the center of your table. Everyone take one. We have, I wish I could say that this is the resource that's going to help you figure out everything about your leadership and healthiness. No, it's really just a assessments that we tried to cobble together based off of these 5 marks. So here's what this is before you. There's an introduction page. You just go ahead and skip over that for a second. We have tried to build an assessment that helps you think through these 5 marks. And there are 60 questions here. And each of them, most of them start with an I. Some of them go to my, but most of them are I statements. And here's the goal, is that you're going to look at each of these 60 questions and you're going to say, oh, this is rarely me. This is sometimes me. This is frequently me. This is almost always me. And you're going to be honest, not about the leader that you want to be, not the ideal you, but the real you. and take some time to honestly answer these questions. And then you flip the page, you'll see on page 4, there's the scoring metric there to be able to mark these things down and walk through them. And then you can plot it on this little chart, number chart. And then because valuing results and relationships are two kind of different ideas within one mark, we had to splice that a little bit. Humble confidence, same concept that we're going to splice it out, and you can walk through that. And here's the thing, leaders, learners, we are not here through this assessment that Gateway Church has built, and honestly, it's still in progress. I literally made some edits to it this afternoon, so it is a working document. But here's the thing, is that this is not meant to tell you, are you a healthy or unhealthy leader? It's just meant to help guide and some understanding of some questions, let you reflect, let you think. The 5 marks of a leader are there in description format for you able to read. And then the very last page, page 7, there's a taking it further side of it where there's 5 different things that you could do. One of them you've actually already done, which is watch the Develop Leadership Seminar. Congratulations, you've done one already. But you can also watch it back on YouTube. So all the seminars going back to 2 years ago actually are on YouTube. Ironically, comically enough, they're on our Gateway Student Ministry page. But they're all there for you to be able to go and watch. I'll put that link in an email tomorrow. But you can go back and watch this as well if that's something. But there are some steps here if you want to take it further, because we're not here like on a quantifiable scale. Yeah, we're going to try to hit some healthiness, but we're not going to qualify what's healthy and what's not. That's between you and a mentor, you and a spouse, you and the Lord. And so this is just a tool that can maybe help stir some conversation. So please take it as a tool, not something that we're saying, oh, this is absolute what is healthiness or not. Please don't do that. We're just trying to help put some resources in your hand that could help in this way. So a lot of time and investment's gone into this, and I hope it is something that could be useful to you. Lastly, is to say that we do these seminars every quarter. So the next one is already available for you to be able to sign up for. Let me go ahead and click. Oh, too far. Okay, so this is the next one, September 12th. If you were a planner, you are a scheduler, September 12th, we are going to be talking about a very fun topic, failure. Because everyone loves talking about their own failure, right? Avoiding leadership failure. And we have a special guest who's going to be joining us as Dave is going to take some time to unpack what does it look like to know, okay, as a leader, the more leadership I gain, the more public my failures can be. How do I wrestle with that? And how do I deal with that? And the more influence I have, the greater the failure can also be. So what are some landmines that I should be acknowledging? What are some things I should pitfalls to avoid? What are some steps I can take to know that, yes, failure is inevitable. We're broken, we're human, we're flawed. So what do I do with that when failure comes? I think it's going to be really powerful. I think it's going to be really good. And Dave is going to come and bring us a good word in 3 months. So the registration is already open. If you want it, you can scan that QR code. You can just have that saved on your phone. We'll also be going out in the email tomorrow with the registration link to be able to sign up for that.